This infamous opening sequence would usher in the killer body count subgenre into American pop culture. The slasher, an unseen force of nature, hunts quietly in the night. A vast array of unsuspecting children and teenagers are in the presence of something truly evil. The now infamous soundscape of Harry Manfredini's signature theme guides the audience through a sinister point of view, with crickets and various insects adding to the immersion. The unseen threat draws closer. A group of camp counselors spend quality time together before two of the horny teens break off for some privacy. Director Sean Cunningham would lift the POV killer directly from films before like Halloween, Black Christmas, or Mario Bava's A Bay of Blood even prior. The body count film was not invented by Friday the 13th. However, American audiences would soon popularize the slasher genre and ignite a boom period as a direct effect of the 1980 classic. Over-the-top violence and gore, an abundance of gratuitous nudity, pervasive language, drugs and sex, character tropes, and much more would soon infect American horror fanatics, blowing the door wide open for a pantheon of knockoffs that would soon become just as cherished as those that arrived before. Prior to Friday the 13th, the slasher genre was relegated to the most obscure corners of horror fandom. Here, in the opening introduction, as the mystery threat draws first blood, it signals the coming of age of the American slasher genre. A subgenre fueled by rebellious use and the next wave of horror writers, directors, and everything in between. Numerous monsters and maniacs would soon follow, one more devious and depraved from the one that came before. Burst through that forbidden door would be the next killer, the Cropsey maniac himself. I hope you can swim.
As he screamed out, burned alive, he cried out, "I will return! I will have my revenge!"
In 1980, the upstart company Miramax were bold enough to jump onto the back of Friday the 13th out of desperation of breaking into the film business. Following the success of other chilling and horrifying films like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974 and Halloween from 1978, it was the legend of the Cropsey Killer, the maniac who terrified the population of upstate New York, who fed inspiration to the young filmmaking team looking to leave their own hellish impact in horror cinema. This concept would later materialize as The Burning. Released in 1981 and directed by Tony Maylam, The Burning would feature legendary makeup effects maestro Tom Savini, who was fresh off mutilating people in Dawn of the Dead and the aforementioned Friday the 13th, as well as the brutal maniac. Composing the movie would be prog band Yes's keyboardist Rick Wakeman. As per film slasher rules, the script is brimming with young talent including Jason Alexander, Fisher Stevens, and Holly Hunter, all making their feature film debut. And what is a killer without his signature weapon? Jason has his machete, and Michael bludgeons with a kitchen knife. But in The Burning, this motherfucker Cropsey wields a pair of massive garden shears. Knowing the slasher craze would eventually flatline throughout the 80s, the filmmakers rushed to create what I believe is a very underrated gem worthy of space in any Horror Fiends collection. An 80s summer camp, a lake, rebellious camp counselors, and the teens they are responsible for, and a brutish killer with a face made of hamburger meat. Who is Cropsey? Let's start at the beginning. The urban legend of Cropsey originates from Staten Island, New York. Based off a real-life child murderer, Andre Rand, tall tales haunting generations of children would spread like wildfire. The story of a homicidal maniac who lures young offspring down into his abandoned hospital lair, cutting his victims like pieces of meat. However, as fantastical as these stories can be, there is a glimmer of truth. The mere existence of a bloodthirsty butcher, a child killer, did in fact exist, and not just a spooky fable to scare children or to be idolized in horror films. Stories whispered over burning campfires. The boogeyman eerily creeping its way out of our twisted fantasies and into our reality. And that's exactly what would happen. Children and teens would eventually begin disappearing throughout the early 80s. Andre Rand, a homeless janitor, would be accused of multiple charges of kidnap and murder after the devastating death of a young girl with Down syndrome and multiple other atrocities against various youths. There just wasn't enough evidence to convict Rand to any of the murders. To this day, Andre Rand still rots in prison, with no eligibility of parole until 2037. He would be 93 years old. Is Andre Rand the real Cropsey killer? Or is there something far worse roaming those grounds looking for revenge? Cropsey, an abusive alcoholic camp caretaker, has earned the ire of several campers residing in Camp Blackfoot. The young teens plot to scare the living shit out of Cropsey in his sleep. One of the campers enters Cropsey's room. The snoring is deafening. A match is carefully lit. The ringleader exits the cabin and joins the other culprits in rudely awakening Cropsey. A skull littered in worms faces our victim, the burning candles highlighting the melted flesh. Cropsey panics, tipping over the flaming cranium, engulfing his bed in fire, swallowing up poor Cropsey whole. The teen pranksters attempt to rescue the bastard, but it's far too late. The burning man jumps into the cold river to extinguish the flames, vanishing, never to be seen again. Weeks later, Cropsey would resurface in a hospital, completely disfigured from head to toe, grotesque and enraged. Cropsey would be discharged 5 years later, hell-bent on revenge. It wouldn't take long for the maniac to claim his first victim. The Cropsey killer is born, and soon he would elicit his vengeance on all of Camp Blackfoot. The Burning is a film that quite honestly deserves more attention and praise. It belongs up there with Friday the 13th and Sleepaway Camp. The Cropsey maniac, born out of real horrific circumstances, is every bit as frightening. The memorable soundtrack sets the stage for the intensity and violence that eventually comes to a head. His gnarled face, a product of Tom Savini, wasn't as well received due to only being given 3 days to complete. Still, it's haunting enough to give children nightmares. Cropsey has no remorse, no repent. The mere thought of something this evil and devoid of empathy that will stop at nothing to slaughter countless bodies without regret can be real is as unnerving as it gets. Even in death, his story lives on, burning bright until the next wave of unsuspecting victims enter his ghastly territory, telling his story and once again fueling his fire.
Kill them all!
Cropsey's trapped alive and burning in his bunk. They try to get him out, but the fire's so fierce they can't reach him. All they can do is stand outside and listen to him cry out in agony. They say he smashed his way through the bunk room door, just a mass of flames.